This is like something we just like never talk about in retail. It's almost like all the other stuff covers it up and we're like, this isn't worth a conversation. The problem is that this is actually what teams are experiencing day in, day out in a store. A lot of the systems in retail aren't up to par. If you think the technology and the registers haven't kept up, HVAC systems, plumbing systems, where toilets get clogged every 3 seconds, all of these things are things that are forgotten about. And even during remodels, you get new floors, new walls, the new registers, everything looks beautiful, but no one updated the plumbing or the HVAC. So you still have work order issues. And here's the thing, it's very distracting from your job to be hot, to be cold, to not be able to go to the bathroom in your store.
To have to put in a work order to change the temperature, that's insane. Like, that's objectively insane. I don't care how long you've been in retail. Matt, last time we were recording, you dropped a little nugget about how maintenance work orders impact morale, and I'm super curious and I need to learn more. So I have a whole bunch of questions for you, but before I let you loose, can you help me just like understand what we're talking about? So can you give me a couple of examples, or what are the most common maintenance work orders?
I would say the most common has to do with HVAC, so either heating or air conditioning. Most
Gotcha.
common, most powerful in terms of its ability to impact morale, positively or negatively.
Interesting. Okay, so how does it work? How do you first notice something is going wrong, and then what do you do?
Well, so we need to branch out a little here and explain that there's two kinds of retailers. The first I'm going to mention, I will not work at anymore. It's actually now a question when I interview, which sounds psychotic. But hi, it's me. And that is, the question I ask is, do store teams have the ability to set the temperature in their store without restrictions? And the reason that is important is, so obviously the opposite, the other part of that is that some stores you get to set your temperature like you would at home, whatever makes you and your clients or your customers comfortable. But the first part, I think most people don't even realize how common that is. It's actually more common than not. In some stores, you have no control over it whatsoever. You can't even plus or minus. It's just the temperature is what it is. And if you think it's too warm in your store, you just have to put in a work order and say it's too warm. If you think it's too cold, you have to put in a work order to say it's too cold. Some companies, like that Green Apron coffee company, you can change it within 2 degrees, but that's it. You've got a 2 plus and a 2 minus. That's it. Anything more than that, if it's not comfortable for you, too bad, so sad, move on. The reason that this is a problem, and I'm getting like really like into the weeds here, because this is like something we just like never talk about in retail. It's like, it's almost like all the other stuff covers it up and we're like, well, this isn't worth a conversation. The problem is that this is actually what teams are experiencing day in, day out in a store. And the thing is, I live in New England. And the thing about living in New England is the weather, not predictable. So some of these companies have it set. So like, May 1st, AC hits. October, November 1st, whatever, heat hits. Well, currently, I'm sitting here in January, and yesterday we had a high of 20 degrees Fahrenheit, okay? A week before that, we had a high of 55 degrees Fahrenheit.
Right.
In the same month, in the same season. And so if my heat or air or whatever was company controlled, I would have to put in a work order. And in one of the companies I worked in, I found out you put in a work order and then someone in corporate has the ability to control your temperature from like a laptop, essentially. So they're just like, boop, boop, putting a temperature down, like they're hot. But you can't do it yourself. And I think, I think that if that is how the company operates with how comfortable you're going to be in your day-to-day, that tells you everything you need to know about everything else they're going to do. But getting back to work orders and how that works. Even the companies where you get to control your own,
Yeah.
a lot of the systems in retail aren't up to par. If you think the technology and the registers haven't kept up with the year that we're in and with upgrades, HVAC systems, plumbing systems, because I've also worked places where toilets get clogged every 3 seconds or break down every 3 seconds. All of these things are things that are like forgotten about. And even during remodels, I've seen where you get a shiny new remodel, new floors, new walls, the new registers, everything looks beautiful, but no one updated the plumbing or the HVAC. So you still have work order issues. And here's the thing, it's very distracting from your job to be hot, to be cold, to not be able to go to the bathroom in your store. So you have to like find a local coffee shop, or if you're in a mall, go to the food court, which means you have to let your employees go. And we all know how that's going to go because they're going to be like, can I go to the bathroom? And then like, you're like, and they got lost. So it leads to a whole slew of other issues. And yeah, work orders are just not something we talk about because it's just not very sexy.
So much to unpack. Okay, so first, tactically, let's say like just to have to put in a work order to change the temperature, that's insane. Like that's objectively insane. I don't care how long you've been in retail. Um like, also, what happens if corporate can't? You put in a work order because you guys are sweltering or freezing. What if corporate can't change the temperature? Does like a maintenance person have to come in? How does then what?
Yeah. So, well, what would happen at um, a company where you could only change it plus or minus two? They'd have to send out like an HVAC technician. They'd come and make sure the thermostat was still working. And then if it was, they'd be like, nope, that's just the what it is in here. And yeah, and they confirm with like usually like some sort of like thermometer laser gun thing, like different points of the store, like whether it's actually the temperature the thermostat says it is. The problem is again, because these are things people don't think about when they build out retail stores because they don't give a shit about employee comfortability most of the time. Where did you put the thermostat? Is the AC thermostat right under the air vent? And
Right.
so the second the AC kicks on, it cools the thermostat down, and then the thermostat's like, it's cold, turn off. But the rest of your store is sweltering because that's actually how my Green Apron experience was. It was hot as hell in that store. Um, because behind our bar, there was like a drop down ceiling. So the rest of the cafe was like tall open ceilings. There was a drop down behind the counter. And what that did was it trapped all the heat from the espresso machine, from the coffee maker, from the dishwasher, from the ovens. So behind the counter, it's like 80 degrees and you're sweating. Customers sitting in the cafe, it's like 68 and they're freezing in the summer. Like,
Right.
so, and we're talking Fahrenheit for you Canadian folks. Sorry, America is just, we're not there yet, okay? Um, we never will be. So so yeah, there's the design too of a space and whether it's works. But yeah, a technician does have to come out and verify. And you know, sometimes the technician would come out and be like, yeah, you're good, there's nothing I can do. And then I, being me, I'll put in work orders every day just to waste money. We're wasting your money now. Because I'm hot. And if you get me to sweat and I don't work outside, we have problems. Um, I don't do well in the heat. I'm not a heat person. I get grouchy, I get cranky, and then I break all the rules. There was somewhere else I worked where they couldn't fix the heat because the mall controlled it.
Right.
And I'll tell you, nothing has ever made me more angry. We're going to go on a side quest story here. The women of this podcast will probably enjoy this more than the men. So I'm so sorry to the men. You're not all bad, but maybe think about it. Worked in the store for a company that bragged internally that it made, you know, It's a $10 billion company. But they can't fix the thing because our mall controls it. So a regional comes, hi, Brian, and talks to me about it because it like escalated because I kept putting in work orders. I was ready to, and the thing is like, this is my Old Navy experience is very good. I've talked lovingly about them. I did really well there. And once we did really well and the heat was still an issue, and my employees were like, they're never going to fix it. Like, whatever. And I was like, well, maybe if we're like number one, they'll think about it because then we're not making excuses. I let my employees not show up in dress code because I didn't care. I was like, I don't care if you show up in a bikini. Go ahead, go for it. I'll defend you. I'm not writing you up. It's hot in here. So regional came and talked to me about it. And then they had like a regional from the mall and someone else come there. And I thought, oh my God, we're going to get some things done. Instead, those three men stood in like a little circle and were like, basically like, oh, well, so, I mean, it's not that bad. Well, you know, I've worked in hotter places, when I was in a store 27 years ago, sometimes you just have to deal with what you have to deal with. And that's just the way it is. These kids these days, blah, 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 blah. I was like watching this from afar, like, wow. And then I remember this was the second experience in my life where a regional person asked me a genuine question of, well, what do you want me to do? Mm-hmm. Like, almost like the mall controls it. We can't control the mall. The mall isn't going to spend more money to like cool down this 17,000 square foot store. And it's like, I want you to use the same mechanisms of power that you use to get a real estate deal to lower rent, which I know you do. Because, for example, I was in a mall that was like dying. So I know we have even more power. And I know that companies get rent abatements all the time. And they have no problem flexing their $10 billion power to get a rent abatement or a better deal or whatever it is. And I need you to do that to get the store to be colder. How is this hard? What? You're big, tough, regional person when you come in, but now you have to deal with what? Another man equal to you, and suddenly you're all scared now? Because I'm not scared. I'll yell at him. Like, I'll do something. And it was one of those moments where I was just like, I lost a lot of respect for some of the leadership above me. And I also they looked, pardon the turn of phrase, but it made them in my eyes look really impotent. Like, because you come in here so, like, some of the people in that corporate chain come into stores so like, you're going to be scared of me. This denim better be folded or what else. And then I see that and I'm like, you're just a scared little baby like the rest of us. This is a show. You don't have any power. And that was like, it sounds really stupid to say out loud, but when you work in 82 degrees all summer, you can talk to me about what sounds stupid or not. But that was like the beginning of the end for me at that company. That was like that was one of the like, so all this talk about people and whatever, but you only mean that when it's easy, because all the other stuff you do is easy, really. This is hard. This would require someone to like, maybe on the real estate team, probably, honestly, maybe a lawyer, someone to get involved. And you don't want to do all that. That's like some heavy lifting. You're not going to do because it's not worth it. Because what does it matter? The summer will be over and we'll get over it. And then next summer, because retail is such high turnover, you'll have a brand new team who won't even know that this is the normal and that this is what you've been doing. So why bother? Why fix it? Is what it felt like. Can't say that was the actual reason, but.
Wow. Okay. So again, please forgive my ignorance. If you put in a work order because you're hot or cold, and you are not empowered to control the temperature to be comfortable in your own store, and a maintenance worker comes and confirms, yes, it is in fact hot or cold in here. For one, like, yes, in fact, your store manager isn't lying. That's a lovely signal. But two, then nothing happens. So if nothing is broken, nothing
Mhm.
happens.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Well, because it's funny because now my husband, who left retail to go work in HVAC, so that's kind of a funny, just a funny note. But because a lot of these systems are old and quite frankly, probably need to be replaced, like fully, which is lots of money.
Right.
And yeah, I just don't think a lot of people want to make that investment in stores.
That's wild.
I mean, I was told by one company I worked at, by the way, just so we can set the standard straight for everyone listening, I, Matthew Copeland, am a job hopper. Not not really proud of that statement, but when we have these types of conversations, I just need you to know I know that this is the norm and no one listening can tell me it's not. I've been
Yeah.
too many places. HVAC in New England, especially with our crazy ass weather, where it snows one day and then it's the desert heat the next. HVAC has been an issue in almost every single store I've ever worked. The only time it wasn't was when I worked somewhere where we sold chocolate and it had to be cold
Right.
because then they had to have a system that was like built for it. When I was at another company on Newbury Street in Boston, very, wealthy, our version of Fifth Avenue, worked at a place where I was told by the HVAC person, he was like, well, this is never going to work in the summer. And I was like, what do you mean? He was like, the AC you have, the unit was built to cool half this space. So the
Right.
only way we're ever, because it kept breaking, because it was overworking.
Right.
So the only way it's going to work is if they install a new unit entirely. And I was like, good to know. Thank you. Can you write that on paper and submit that in your work order? Just because I want it in print somewhere. And here's the thing, when things like this don't work, you make store managers, at least I do, you make them like get into cahoots with the work order people because you're like, can you write this down? Yeah, can
Right.
you? I mean, I've actually said to contractors, I had a fridge broken somewhere and it was like the worst fridge on the planet. It kept breaking, whatever, all these issues. And I finally, and it was too big for the space. And I finally said to the guy when it broke, I go, can you just put that it's a goner? I don't even care if right here, right now, you break it so that it is a goner. Can you just put it so that I can get a new one? Because at this point, we've paid you for a new fridge with all the times you've come out here. And that's the
Right.
thing about the HVAC service. Yes, I know HVAC service isn't nearly as much as the 40K it might cost to like put in a new unit at a big store. But how much money are you willing to really spend at playing this game? And first of all, we're like padding these people's checks because they're showing up like just showing up again to tell you it's not fixable,
Right.
making my life easy.
I'm gonna point my
Um,
laser at this thing and take the
yeah,
temperature.
that's what it was at Old Navy. They pointed the laser at the air duct above us
Yeah.
to make sure cold air was coming out. Let's say the store, I don't remember the temperatures, but let's say the store was like 82 degrees. That is a real temperature. It was like somewhere between 82 and 84.
Wow.
He's like, well, the air coming out of the duct is 77. I was like, oh, wow, Arctic chill. But here's the thing, fun fact that I learned because I know more about, here's the thing about that. You can't lie to me now. I know all about plumbing, HVAC. I've learned a lot because sometimes when those people show up, I'm like, can you teach me a little bit? Can you give me a little bit of knowledge, which will make me really annoying to everyone else?
Mhm.
Um, but what I learned from a couple of people is that the air coming out of a duct should be 15 degrees cooler than you actually want it to be in the room.
Mm.
So if you want the room to be 70 degrees, the air coming out should actually be 55 degrees.
Right.
Um, so basically 77-degree air pushing into an 82-degree store, not really doing much, just moving air around. It's not going to cool anything.
Right.
Um, and yeah, we're getting really into the minutia here, but I think it's really important that people understand this is the stuff that store managers deal with frequently. And it's not what we talk about because throughout all this conversation, I'm still being held accountable for conversion and sales while I'm sweaty and annoyed. And while I'm secretly in the back, like, wait, tell me a little bit more about how this system works.
Right.
Um, I remember, and this is a different story, different thing, but I think it's important to mention in the work order realm a little bit. I worked at a store, my first store manager job, where two things happened. One, we had a parking lot that was shared with a bank. Our landlord was terrible. If I ever see that man in public, may he run away lest he be injured. Um, Public threats in a podcast, always a good look. Um, don't edit it out, Becky. Leave it in there. I didn't say his name. But so we had a landlord that would tow people from our parking lot because they would park at our parking lot to use public transit. But
Okay.
many times they actually ended up towing customers who were in my store. It turned into a big thing, and that's not a work order, that's like an email, and I literally had to go through real estate and all these other people. And essentially the thing came back to me as like I had to they wouldn't let me put a sign on the door that was basically like, you may get towed if you're here. So when the tow truck people would come, I'd make a big announcement in the store. It was like a whole thing. It was very dramatic. It was very annoying. It was very stressful because then I had customers screaming at me because their car was towed while they were sitting there.
Right.
Um, so that's one thing that happened there. The other thing that happened is it was a 13-year-old store. It really needed to be a remodel. And when I took it over, I was basically like sort of promised, like, yeah, we'll redo the floor. We'll do all these things, but this store needs to perform. Well, it performed. And then I got promoted to a higher volume store um, in a couple of towns over. And I remember asking the district manager at the time, hey, is my old store going to get like a new floor now? Because like we did so well, I got promoted. So like, yeah. And he was like, that's not something you need to worry about because it's not your store anymore. And I was like, okay, cool. Meanwhile, though, I still feel a responsibility to the employees that are there. They're telling me about the towing issue still happening, some other facilities issues happening, also an HVAC issue. Um, and I remember when I left, when I gave my notice, I had some issues with my DM. Hi, Mike. And the regional, Sam, called me. Now, Sam was one of my favorite people I've ever interacted with in like that high of a role. And I don't even know if he was a regional. I think he was actually like the director of stores, maybe. And he called me personally on my cell phone to basically be like, why are you leaving? You should stay, kind of thing. It was a very beautiful call. It was 2 hours long. But one of the things I said to him was, I have some frustration built up about like how the store is good enough for the store leader to get promoted, but not good enough to get what it needs in terms of like facilities issues and the towing and the floors and the HVAC. And he said, what do you want me to do? Again, this question that was asked almost a decade later at a different company by in a similar role. And I said, I what and I said this to him on the phone because again, I've given my notice, so I don't need to mince words. And I was like, well, Sam, what the hell is the point? I don't even think I said hell. I do think I swore it. I said, what is the point of your role and being as high as you are if you can't do anything? That does not give me confidence in this organization's ability to fix problems. Um, and I think I made him like feel personally bad because he was like, well, you're right. I don't have the power to just carte blanche fix it. And I was like, but if you don't have the power, then no one has the power. And honestly, that's fine. But then someone should have told me your floor's never going to get fixed. The HVAC is always going to be like this. And we can't do anything about your scummy landlord. So just deal with it all. Why go in circles? Why have people show up to pretend they can fix something? Why promise me things you cannot deliver?
Yeah.
Um, because in my head, I'm like, then who controls the purse that controls whether things actually get done? How do we talk to that person? Because you're
Yeah.
running all the stores and you don't have any influence or sway. Now, juxtapose this to, I'm jumping around a little bit, but it all is related to when I worked at the Green Apron place. And they didn't fix the heat because that's just their rule. It's a +2, -2, and the thermostat is where it is. But I did have a regional show up there, and I told her about how unfunctional behind my counter is because I didn't have enough ice bins. The flow wasn't correct. We couldn't actually follow the procedure the way it's supposed to be followed in terms of like workflow because of the setup. And I got a mini remodel. I walked her through. She asked me what I wanted, and I told her, and I got it. Most magical thing probably in my career that I've seen, because she looked at me like, yeah, it's going to cost like 30 grand. We can do that. And it wasn't, I didn't have to earn it. I was brand new to the company. Earned me a lot. But the thing is that they don't understand is that like that remodel, that mini remodel earned so much goodwill with employees. They were like, wait, you told them that this doesn't work? And they list, like, I got points, I got morale points, but so did the company because they were like, wow, they're going to make it easier for us.
Right.
That's amazing. And I was also breaking a rule at the time, just in terms of how something was kept, not a food like rule, but just an aesthetic rule.
Right.
But I did it for convenience. And they were like, did she say anything about how we're keeping this? And I go, no, I explained why we did it because we need to do it. And she didn't bat an eye. Like,
Right.
so it's like that earned us a lot of goodwill. And it's like, you have the same power. And I would actually more power with like comfortability of store. Anyway, that was a long-winded rant, but for those listening, you've probably heard me go on a lot of rants and a lot of things that I get like elevated. This is probably my number one. This is if I only could die on one hill, just one. This is the one I'm dying on.
Wow. That's big. Let me try and synthesize some of what I heard. So first, number one, why gate the temp? What is the reason for gatekeeping the temperature in stores?
Oh, that's a real question. I thought we were doing.
I mean, I think it's probably obvious, but like, let's just go ahead and put it out there.
Well, I think it's two things. I think it's cost so that people aren't keeping it 50 degrees in the summer, which would be expensive. They're basically finding a way to take that line item of the P&L and keep it pretty stable when it could fluctuate a lot, especially in a place like New England. Yep. And I think the second thing they're doing is you can actually break a unit by putting it too cold or too hot in the season. And so rather than ask teams to be responsible, they're just taking that power out of your hands.
Got it. And I'm sure you'd hear some sort of story about, well, we tried not, and somebody did this one time, and now you all must suffer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm sure
that usually happens. Okay, I just wanted to like put that out there. You do understand how money and temperature and energy works. That's not an issue. You can be trusted to manage something like that. Number two, it sounds like once you communicated to someone that it was impacting your ability to deliver operational excellence, something was done. That's what I heard in that one example where you were like kind of showing how like the workarounds you had to do and how it was impacting your day-to-day, your ability to do what they want you to do.
Mm-hmm.
So can we talk more about how it does impact your ability to do what they want you to do?
Yeah, I mean, I think one, obviously, just to keep it simple and not go on too many tangents here, one, it keeps you distracted from the real work you have to do, whether it's because the toilet's not working or you're hot or whatever the work order issue is. It's keeping you distracted. Number two, especially if it's actually both, whether it's the bathroom and you now have to leave the store or if it's the comfortability of the store, you're not going to be nearly as productive. You're going to move a lot slower when you're hot than you would if you were, comfortable. And I think one of the thing we're not saying or haven't said is that retail, especially high volume, under payrolled places, which there are a lot of those in retail,
Mm.
ask their teams to move at breakneck pace in order to keep things moving.
Mhm.
You can't move at that pace. The pace becomes, if you work at Starbucks or Old Navy or one of these companies where you really do have to move at a very quick pace
Mhm.
and you become used to that, you don't even realize how fast and efficient you are until you are hot and sweating. And then you're like, oh my God, I can't do what I normally can do because it's too uncomfortable. And, in a place like a food service place, you don't want to be sweating because that doesn't look cute when you're like, here's your latte that I'm dripping my sweat into. Yum. Um,
Yeah.
like, but also like the thing that I haven't mentioned either is this also affects customers' opinions of the brand.
Yeah.
When customers come in and they're uncomfortable, it's too hot to try on clothes like comfortably. Because
Yes.
let's be real, sometimes you're trying on clothes for the winter when it's still hot outside because you're, a season ahead in clothing retail. You don't want to be, trying on a cashmere sweater when you're dewy. And also, I don't want to try on the cashmere sweater after you tried on the cashmere sweater that's now covered in your DNA.
Hmm.
And so that is not a great look, but it's also not a great look for places like food service where you get a regular customer base because a one off event, customers will be like, oh, yeah, sucks when things break or whatever.
Right.
But if every day they come in and it's uncomfortable in the store, they're going to be like, wait, especially if it's a bigger company, because that's when customers are emboldened and start to say things like, wait, isn't this like a $26 billion company? They can't fix the whatever. And then you have employees sweating into lattes defending the $26 billion company that's not fixing their HVAC, which only makes them more angry because they're like, now you're making me defend you because, it's not appropriate for me to like complain with the customer. And now
Right.
they have to make it seem like it's fine. Yeah, it's just a little warm. Like,
Ugh.
uh, and that's not a good look because customers aren't stupid.
Yeah.
And so they're looking at that like, oh my God. Like, and
Yeah.
so I, yeah, it affects productivity, affects service, it affects morale of customers and employees. It really has far reaching effects that we don't talk about because it's not pay or benefits or one of
Mm.
the other, big topics.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like it affects sales, or at least can.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I
Yeet.
worked somewhere that the product actually was be affected by the heat because it was a cosmetics beauty brand. So certain things that got hot
Hmm.
would uh disintegrate or go bad or quite frankly like melt in the
Yeah.
heat, and we lost thousands of dollars worth of product every summer, and I had to show them in multiple year P&Ls how much money. I was like, by now we could have bought the new HVAC system that guy
Right.
told us we need. Um, and also like, um, I'm going to use the word you're not supposed to use in retail. Big scary word, guys. And me and Becky have not done an episode on it. It would be ballsy if we did. Union. Uh,
Hmm.
Companies cannot be surprised when employees get frustrated about conditions and then try to unionize. And then they sort of gaslight employees because they're like, well, we give you this or we give you that. Here's the thing. I don't, if you look through all of the union interviews that newspapers have done,
Yeah.
especially for that big place that I'm now too scared to say their name. If you look at all the interviews that they've done with employees, partners, if you will, um, a lot of those interviews, people are like, my store has had a broken fridge for 3 months. My store has had a, It is actually a facilities issue that
Yeah.
made the employee go, enough is enough. It wasn't their pay. It wasn't customers. It wasn't their schedule. Those are all things they care about, and those are all things they mention. But if you read through those interviews, it's something I noticed a long time ago. Go back. Go. I don't care what paper you go read, your local paper, a national paper. Read an interview that someone has done about someone who wants to unionize. I don't care if it's a grocery store or a coffee chain or what it is. They will there will be in that story somewhere someone telling you, and the last straw was the week that I was sweating to death.
Yeah.
So this has farther costs and implications because now we got to pay lawyers. And
Right.
now we got to go to court. Also, you couldn't fix the HVAC system. Insane. Insane behavior, honestly.
I'm almost like, I'm not a licensed psychologist, but I almost wonder. It sounds like like physical discomfort is a new level of
Mhm.
signal. You know what I
Yes.
mean? Like, and we talk a lot about how much people who have been in retail for a really long time, you take so much in stride for like that's just retail, right? Like so many things that I would call objectively insane. Um, you and other folks who have been in field retail for a really long time know as status quo. But I would be curious to learn once you are physically uncomfortable at length with no end in sight, besides like a literal season changing, I'd be really curious to talk to someone who is a licensed psychologist about what happens inside your head. Like, because it's connected.
Mhm. Oh,
Like,
for sure.
yeah,
Even in the moments where again, I told you that working at that big clothing company, that was like sort of the beginning of the end. The coffee company that towed cars and wouldn't fix the floor and HVAC, also the beginning of the end, because it also changed my perception of
right.
the brand as a whole and what they meant and what their words meant. Because I also think physical comfortability is actually, you're saying that now, and now I'm realizing that that's like really what it is. It's like
Mhm.
something you can't work through, right? All the mental hoops you can work through, right? Like if I'm like, I don't think I'm paid well enough, or I'm kind of micromanaged, you can kind of justify, rationalize. I mean, even you or I have said this is probably what corporate is thinking when they're micromanaging. What they really want is they want flawless execution. This is just the way they think they need to get it, etc.
Right.
So we've like stepped into their office to try to make sense of the nonsensical. But when it
Mhm.
comes to being physically uncomfortable, you can't. There's no making sense of it. You're just like, and I'm sweating,
Yeah.
um, and I had employees at that clothing brand, by the way, who on not one occasion, it was more than one, had to buy a new shirt while working because because they just felt gross. I didn't make them buy a new shirt. They were just like, "Oh, I
Yeah.
just like feel disgusting and I can't help people when I feel like I'm gross." Um
Right.
and it really, it also makes that the conversation of the day. You can distract teams from a lot of nonsense. You can't distract them from being uncomfortable.
Right. Yeah. Well, if we were to start to kind of wind this down, summarize a little bit, but also let's unpack what it means, what it signals, because we talk a lot about operationalizing values, or and in Cato especially, we talk a lot about how operations is a channel. It is a channel of communication and is a way to communicate your brand, your values, what you prioritize. So just to make sure we're hitting the nail right on the head, being really obvious about it, what does it signal to you that you are doing what you're being asked to do? You're following protocol. When you're put in this situation, your business is jeopardized, right? Your metrics are jeopardized. Your morale is sinking, if not at least distracted, certainly not optimal. How does it feel when nothing is done?
I mean, the signal you're getting is that they don't actually care.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the biggest thing. And I think that is what sort of led me to the conclusion of like, I have to go.
Right.
Because if you just don't care at all about, because the thing is, like, none of the people you're dealing with have to be in the uncomfortable space with you.
Right.
They're not working alongside me every day. And when that regional came in to like bro out with the bros, and basically not care about our heat, um, they were in our store for maybe an hour and they were like, well, it's not, it's uncomfortable, but it's not the worst we've seen. And I basically had to look at this person and be like, do you want to fold a denim wall right now? And by the
Right.
way, I need you to complete it in 2 hours. You can't go slow.
Yep.
So, the amount of, I really wanted to look at him and be like, hustle there, broski. What? You
Yeah.
a little hot? You a little sweaty? How's it feel now? Because we're not asking employees to move, because it's also different if you're working in, I mean, I would argue, and this is just the way it is, this is a little classist, but this is just the way retail works. If we're in a luxury store and it's too hot,
Mm-hmm.
a company would care more about the clients because the employees aren't moving really. You're just standing there selling. So like, it's not
Right.
actually that uncomfortable. You can deal with quite a bit more in that environment, but then it would become about clients aren't going to shop if they're uncomfortable. So then we care about the clients. I would argue that companies still don't do too enough when it's the clients either. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but it's a different like value system. But also, again, luxury employees aren't running around. They're just standing there. And they're doing a lot of work. Don't take me saying that as a offense if you work in luxury retail.
Right.
Um, but yeah, anyway, it really signals not caring. And when you feel like someone doesn't care, where do you go from there, right? Um, again,
Yeah.
I've used this more in our earlier podcast days. I've kind of stopped, not intentionally, but it's like a relationship, right? If you're,
Mm-hmm.
if you are in a relationship with someone, and to be fair, being in an employee company thing is a relationship.
Yeah.
But when you're in a romantic relationship and you're sitting across the table from someone, the moment if someone said to you, either through signals or directly, I just don't care.
Yeah.
Or if you're like, you're hurting me, and the person's like, you just got to deal with it. That's just who I am. You're not staying in that relationship. Because you're going to be like, wow, okay, they've signaled they don't care. And when people signal they don't care, I think our brains just shut down at that point. There's nothing else to say. There's nothing else to do. Because again, because to stay is to admit to yourself, and I would argue that there are people in retail who do this. I'm so sorry. I think they also need that same therapist you're going to hire, is to admit to yourself, I'm not worth caring about. And I guess that's just what it is.
Mm.
Um, because trust me, I've come into stores and actually gotten certain things fixed, and employees will tell me they don't care.
Right.
Like, oh, they don't care about this. And of course, I'm me. So I'm like, and you're still here? What do you mean?
Right.
Because some people do stay, but they're not the most engaged because they, in the back of their mind, have that overlaying narrative of, I'm not cared about.
Yeah. And I think that's really what I wanted to make sure was really clear. Obviously, again, we'll get that licensed psychologist on the show at some point, but I think it's pretty reasonable as humans to say, obviously, the response is, if you don't care, why should I?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And, like that's what anyone would do. And if that happens over and over again, either you get folks who leave because they want to find somewhere where they feel like they are cared about, even if a little bit more, or they stop trying. And so then what happens when corporate needs you to care, to go above and beyond, right? Like to do extra, to do more with less, all those things, or to help with something else. It's like you can't call on those people when you've trained them how to perceive you and how to treat you. Really interesting. I feel like we could talk about so much more. So maybe like part two coming up. Any final thoughts?
No, but I do. Well, I'm speaking, so I guess the answer is yes. I do have a final thought, which is I want to tie this in just to wrap it up too with one of the things that I said is a realization for myself personally. Like this is a personal note, but going to make it a little bit more macro. In talking with you and you having asked me all of these questions, both on this podcast and not on this podcast, and our own spare time together, um, I have realized, you know, like we've talked about, there's sort of these three things. There's pay, there's like the mission of the company or the values, and then there's the day-to-day. Those are sort of the three factors in what makes someone happy. And I've realized in our conversations that I have cared too much about pay and too much about values in my own career and not enough about what does my day-to-day look like. And it's really why I'm so satisfied in my job now, is because I love the day to day. I also actually love the values, and I think I'm paid well. So I actually have all three. But the bigger point is I'm realizing that the reason I love it though is not because of the pay and not because of the values. It's really because every day I go to work and I really love what I'm doing. And I think that that's super important. And I'm saying that all to say, I've shared that realization with friends of mine in retail, and it's making them think too about their day to day and how important that is. And this ties into this. If that's true, that a lot of people actually are either undervaluing their day to day or already know that about themselves, that the day to day is king, then what we just discussed in these preceding, 40-ish minutes is actually exceedingly important and deserves as much of the conversation as pay and values. It just doesn't sound as fun or sexy. So I don't think we give it the attention it deserves. That's the point I hope that everyone leaves this conversation with.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. It's like you said, it's not just that it sounds unsexy, it sounds small.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it sounds trivial.
Mm-hmm.
But as we've just heard in detail, it's not. Yeah. The physical discomfort leads to the psychological stuff, and it's just, and more importantly, like the signal, the side it sounds. I wouldn't say more importantly, because it is important that you are physically able to do your job. I think that's a perfect place to leave it. Thanks as always, Matt.
Thank you.
You're listening to Dear Corporate, Love Stores.